doing tonight, Roz. We are thrilled to welcome you to the Judaica Gallery and to the Westchester Jewish Center virtual.
What more is changed?
I'm sorry? Everybody who joins, if you could please mute your microphones, that would be ideal, okay?
Did I mute my
Roz, just give us a wave so we all know that you're on. Thank you. It's great to see you tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
That's great.
And our program tonight coincides with our virtual exhibition, Theories of Everything, which we were so pleased to put together. And I must thank Leslie Millman and Iris Scott for their help in curating and preparing this program tonight, and Rabbi Jeff Arnowitz and the executive director of WJC, David Goldstein, for their support and their help tonight. And we're just so pleased to welcome Roz into our midst. It's the first time she's joining us here. And I just want to jump right in and tell you that Roz is a cartoonist and humorist, many of you may know from The New Yorker, and where she's made contributions to our collective better mood for more than 40 years there. In addition to her regular cartoons and covers at the magazine, she, as you must know, has written many books and does other artwork aside from drawing, and we'll explore some of that as we go on tonight. She is the author of books for both adults and children. Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, which many of you must know, which is about her parents' final years. An A to Z guide to the alphabet that she did with Steve Martin, and Going Into Town, which is a guide to her beloved city of New York that she prepared for her daughter when her daughter was moving into the city. So as I mentioned a couple of times as we were waiting to begin, we also have Carol Corey here, who is the gallerist who represents Roz at the Carol Corey Gallery in Kent, Connecticut. And I encourage all of you to go up there, where there's a little hamlet now of wonderful galleries that may have gotten their start in New York, or even there's one from Larchmont that's there now too. So thank you for joining us, Carol, as well. It's a pleasure to collaborate with you. So welcome, Roz. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you. So you've said a couple of times when you've been interviewed that when a writer is born into a family, the family is finished.
Backwards and forwards.
It's a quote. It's a quote from a Polish poet named Czesław Miłosz, but it's one of my favorite quotations.
What do you want?
Yeah. And so much so that I believe you embroidered it on a pillow, right?
It's not a pillow. It's, I mean, you could put it on a pillow if you wanted, but it's really just a tapestry. It's a piece of fabric that I embroidered it on with a drawing, kind of a picture of a little girl, I guess, with her parents, they seem sort of proud of her. She's probably about 6 or 7 years old. But yeah, I think it's probably true.
Yes. You know, it's when people, when you have kind of something to say. I'm going to share my screen for a minute so I can try to share with you all what I'm talking about. It's a little bit small, but if you see it here, there's a little girl between two parents. And I believe that represents something in your life, right, Roz?
Yeah, I would guess to some extent it's, you know, my story or the story of any artist or writer, I think. I mean, she's holding a notebook in one hand, and I don't know if you can see, and a pen in the other hand. Yeah, there you can see a little bit more detail, but yeah, it's embroidered. It's the size is 13 by 16, 17 inches, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I appreciate so much about it is that it's an example for us of how you translate kind of how you look at the world onto art. And that's something that's so enjoyed by all of us as we look at your cartoons each week and as we eagerly open the magazine and hope that you have one in there or maybe even a cover. So when you think about your inspirations for your work and growing up in Brooklyn. Can you share with us a little bit about how your childhood may inform some of the work that you do and the perspective that you bring to the work?
Uh, well, Brooklyn is the world that I know. I think one of the things when I think about cartoonists that I love, they're not just drawing, they're not just coming up with gags that are then illustrated by a random selection of people. I think about, George Price, he had his world. Ed Koren has his world. Helen Hokinson had her world. And not just New York cartoonists. I mean, Archie and Veronica, that was like a certain world. They weren't just like generic boy and girl or man and woman or whatever. They lived in a certain world. And I feel like my characters are not, they're not Charles Saxon's characters. They're not, coming from some upper middle class suburbia with like golf and plaid pants or something like that. So yeah, that's the world that I grew up in. Is, I think that it really does have a lot to do with the world that I draw. The lamps, furniture,
This is the dog.
sorry?
I can ask everybody to mute their screen. That would be great. Myra Levine Harris, your screen is not muted, and neither is Cookie Markov's screen. If you guys could just mute your screens, that would help us a little bit for our conversation. Thank you so much.
What's this from?
Same with Shelley
Yes,
Casson. If
everybody.
you could please mute. I'm sorry, Roz. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so that's kind of for me where, not necessarily the specific cartoon ideas, although a lot of cartoons do come from specific things, in my life, but the milieu in which, sounds so pretentious, in which they take place is probably more New York or Brooklyn, or, it's more that world than
When you were growing up and began kind of getting interested in drawing and artwork, what was that for you? Was it something that, you did all the time and you knew at a very early age that you wanted to be an artist, or how did it kind of unfurl for you?
I think for me, drawing was something I always did from the time I was, before I wrote, before I did anything. I think a lot of little kids do, that they draw, and then at a certain point they sort of stop. And I guess for me, it was something I started as a child, like really little, like, my parents have drawings from when I was like 3, and I just kind of never stopped. It was what I think also, I was not really that good at anything else, and I didn't like to do other things. I did all right in school because my parents were both in the, school system. And so getting poor grades it was unacceptable. It would be like, I don't even know what, like, arson or something, borderline criminal, not borderline, would be criminal to, get below like 90 or something like that. So in high school, I had to do things, but I didn't like the academic world. I only really liked to draw. I was just pulled towards it.
And you went on to go to the Rhode Island School of Design, correct?
Right, RISD, right.
Where you kind of furthered your education with drawing all kinds of forms. And how did your cartoon work fit into that?
It didn't fit in at all. Also, I went to school in the 1970s, and cartooning was not thought of with a lot of favor. Back then, it was very much like minimalist art, conceptual art, performance art. To draw cartoons was sort of violating like many tenets at once. Like, first of all, you were drawing not realistically, but you were drawing like people. You weren't just like some scribble on a page that you would then write like, 10 pages about like why you made this scribble. And it was, some whole, then you'd write a whole essay about this, or, a rusty pipe leaning against a wall. And then that, was the thing. Or I remember at RISD, a big thing was video art. And so there'd be like 2 video cameras, like pointing at each other. And then there would be this like back and forth. I don't even know what it was, but it was just like cartoons were. And then on top of everything else, not only were you drawing like,
Fill the screen.
tables and chairs and lamps and people and like, very, very bad things like that, but you were also making jokes and making jokes. It was like, is there anything tackier than that? So RISD, I learned that even if my work was terrible and nobody liked it, I still wanted to do it. And that's, and I also learned that for the first time, I was with people who were really talented. I mean, I'm like making these like sort of snide comments about video, this and that, but people at RISD there were a lot of people who were just, for the first time, because I was always the class, the kid in the class who drew. And at RISD, everybody there was the kid in the class who drew. So, that was another thing I learned. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't have like the, the jolliest of times there, but I think by the time I got out, I was more aware of things, of, what it was, that I really was going to stick with it, even if nobody liked it.
Right. Well, it sounds like you stuck with it and stuck with it well, because then you ended up in New York afterward.
Yeah.
And you decided that you wanted to try to get them published. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started that? And as you do that, I'm going to share my screen and take us into the exhibition.
Okay. Should I just start? Okay.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you went about getting your first cartoons published?
Well, I started taking around a portfolio of illustrations and, sorry.
New Yorker thing?
If everybody who isn't muted could mute their microphone, please, that would really be great.
Okay. Yeah, so I started taking around a portfolio of illustrations and cartoons. I started out with a portfolio of illustrations because I really did not think I was going to be able to publish any of my cartoons. They didn't look like anything else. They did not look like underground cartoons, and they didn't look like overground cartoons. And I just did not think that I was going to get them published. And I started out the Village Voice. I sold some cartoons to them, and National Lampoon. And in April of '78, my parents subscribed to the New Yorker, and I really did not think that my goal was really to become a cartoonist for the Village Voice, because that was, I really admired Jules Pfeiffer and Stan Mack and Mark Allen Stamety. And I thought my work had more in common with them than the cartoonists at the New Yorker, whose work, many of them whose work I loved, but I just didn't feel like I fit in. But still, I found out when their drop-off day was. And I thought, well, why not, just give it a shot? They won't take anything, but, and I was 23. I really didn't know. I didn't even know who the editor was. I didn't know anything. But I just put together what I had. I guess it was about 50 or 60 cartoons. And I dropped them off. And the way it worked, and I don't know if it works the same way, was you'd go and you bring the cartoons, like a portfolio of stuff, and you drop it off. You didn't see the art editor at the time. You just dropped it off with like somebody in a sort of office outside of those offices. And then you'd come back the next week and pick it up and, look at your rejection note and, then go on and maybe try again the next week. But when I picked it up the next week, there was a note in it from Lee Lorenz, who was the cartoon editor at the New Yorker in 1978. And he said to come back and see him. And I thought, well, this is certainly not going according to the script in my head. This is very different. And I went back and I saw him, and he told me to keep coming back every week, which at the time I didn't know how unusual that was, but that was very unusual. And I remember that he told me, he said, Sean really likes your work. And I had no idea he was referring to William Shawn, who was the editor of the New Yorker, because I was thinking, Sean, it sounds like a very good thing. I imagined that it was the first name of somebody, like I knew Sean Connery, and I knew, well, he's not the editor of the New York. I don't know what this has to do with anything, but it sounded like a good thing. So I was like, good. That's basically almost been my life since, for the last 40 years. I submit a group of cartoons to the New Yorker every week. And sometimes I don't sell any. I submit about 6 or 8 cartoons every single week. They're sketches, but the idea is there. And sometimes they take 1, every blue moon they take 2. Often they don't take any. And that is basically what all the cartoonists do. That's what we do. We don't, I have occasionally met somebody who will say, you have the greatest job in the world. You just do 1 cartoon and they take it. And it's like, I've been doing this for a very long time. 3 different art editors, and it's the same thing. It's like, there's a lot of you have to really want to do this to do it. And if you can, and maybe it also helps if you can't do anything else. If you can do other things besides be a cartoonist, that's what you should probably do, because this is really, there's a lot of rejection and a lot of insecurity. So
I hear that from so many artists of so many different medium, but when you have to submit every week and kind of wait to be judged every week, that must be something.
Sickening. It's absolutely sickening and infuriating, but that's the price.
What's the story of this piece? So this piece is called Shelved, and it was on the cover of the New Yorker on October 18th, 2010.
Yeah.
So how did it become a cover and get colored? And
I just had an idea and I sketched it out, and I could sort of picture it, and this guy on his laptop in front of all these books, and they're looking a little bit, you can't quite see, but every book has a little sort of dismayed expression.
Yes.
So yeah, I sketched it out and submitted it, and they took it. So
yeah, and then after they take it, then you color it?
Well, then I redraw it and tighten it up and figure it out. And because the sketch is really and then after that, then I color it. I have an Instagram account, which is fun because for Instagram, I color things digitally. I draw digitally and I color digitally. But for the New Yorker, I still like to work on paper. So the black and white is all pen and ink on paper, and the gray is washes, and all the colors watercolor.
Wow. Yeah, right. So this one is a cartoon that ran just about a little under a year ago on May 25th.
Yeah.
And it features your signature characters in their living room at the couch with their lamps, which so often we see in the world that you create with your characters. And here they are doing almost what, as I think about them, like what they were born to do in a way, kind of like sit and think about and go through experiences that so many of us can relate to. And that's why I feel like so many of us relate so much to your cartoons, because you bring out these feelings that we were feeling, yet we didn't even realize we were. So what is doing here?
Yeah, well, it's so strange to, watch movies from, the before time when people are just like in restaurants and like they're packed in, and there's like, no, I guess if you went to, Florida, it would be this exactly that. But like, I'm in the city right now, and like people are wearing masks and stuff, but it would be so, I remember at this time, like watching movies, and I'd suddenly like completely lose the thread of the plot, because I'd just be like watching people like walking around like crowded in Midtown, and, going into a restaurant, just like not even thinking about it, and, all shoved in together and nobody wearing masks, and, taking the subway, and it was, but
Right.
I don't know, hopefully getting better. I was on the subway a couple of times today, and, aside from the fact that we were all wearing masks, it was like not too weird.
All right, well, we're going to go into the main sort of room of the gallery, and we have kind of an opening text, which just shares with anyone who enters a little bit about your history at the New Yorker, and your sense of family and community having informed so much of your work, and so much of your humor. And here's Insomnia Jeopardy, which many of us can also relate to. You kind of take your pick, and these are various things that one might stay up late at night fretting about, and yet you've captured it for us with some humor. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got that kind of idea to put those two together?
It's just stuff that, goes through your mind, right? Well, it's, Jeopardy, of course, is the format. But it's just the stupid stuff that goes through one's mind as you're trying to fall asleep. So it's, ways in which people have wronged me as a perennial. Strange noises, diseases I probably have, money troubles, why did I say or do that, and ideas for screenplay. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had some ideas for a screenplay, but I have none. You sometimes have a motif of kind of a circle or a cycle that sometimes appears.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's also very human, and this person in particular really sums it up. It's kind of like this sense of over and over and over again, right? How we all think about things.
Yeah. It is weird. Well, the 24-hour news cycle. I don't know whether it was, I don't think it was always like this, but sometimes I do feel that we're in this kind of.
Yeah, and they certainly make the news last if they find something that's getting good ratings, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
This is a piece that that you did in about 2 years ago now. And one of the things that I love about this piece is that I feel that it's doing a lot of what so much of your work seems to do, which is meet history and nostalgia and tradition with something very contemporary. And here we are with Eve in the Garden of Eden meeting the serpent, and he's offering her a Honeycrisp apple.
Honeycrisp.
Which is like the trendiest apple out there, right?
Well, it's probably at some point the only apple that is even edible. Do you know, I think it was A.J. Liebling who said that red delicious apples are for people who don't like apples, and golden delicious apples are for people who don't like food, which I think is very funny.
Yeah, and a Honeycrisp in our house is like a real commodity. So I do appreciate this one a lot. And one of the things again that what I feel about it is that the medium in which you work, drawing and the embroidery and also your Sankey eggs are things that are all things that have a history and a nostalgia that you kind of bring your own thoughts and ideas and contemporary viewpoints to. So we're going to move ahead to the next wall, and I want to show everybody what I mean by the eggs that you have done. So here are a couple of the eggs that for a while Roz was very into. Are you still doing them?
I am. I've sort of, I've been doing some embroideries lately, but I actually did one about a week ago. I went, I've gone through phases of doing them like one every day for a while, and I'm not quite doing that now, but I love working on an egg. There's something very, and these photos make them, at least on, to me, they make them look giant, but they're just chicken eggs. They're just, from Stop and Shop.
Yeah.
They're, I love working on the egg. I think it's a kind of interesting design problem to work on an egg, because it's, you're working in the round.
Yeah,
So-
and the technique that you use has to do with wax and dye and a particular type of tool
Yes.
that you use, correct?
Yes, that's right. They're not painted. They're, if you know anything about like batik, when you think about batik, you have a piece of fabric and you draw on the fabric with wax, and then you put the fabric in the dye. So where you're drawing with the wax is where the dye is not going to go. So when you do Pisanki, it's that same principle. Where you put the wax, the dye is not going to go. So let's say you have a white egg and you want certain things on the egg to be white. You start with the lightest color and you work your way to the darkest color. So, you go from white to black. The first wax, and you use a little tool, it's called a kiske, Kistke. And it's sort of like a little stick. And then at the end, there's a small brass well. And you heat the brass well over a candle and you get it very hot. And then you use this special kind of wax and you scoop a little wax into it. And then you draw with the kiske where you don't want the dye to go. So I'll start with white and then the melt wax, and you have to keep heating it up, and it's time consuming. It's very finicky in a certain way, but I like it because it's very for me, I get very wrapped up in it, and I don't think about anything else when I'm doing it.
I really appreciate how your characters appear so clearly on them, even so. And this, I believe, is your first cover, correct?
Yes, that was the first cover. And I actually had submitted it as a cartoon. And Lee Lorenz, who was the editor at the time, said, I'd like you to try this as a cover. And so that's what I did. I drew it up as a cover. But I'll tell you one funny thing about this cover. This will give you a little insight into my father. His interpretation was that it was a doctor telling you things that you shouldn't eat because they were bad for you.
And they somehow are all related to ice cream.
Yeah, it's like, no, Dad.
The things that kind of reverberate in our minds, right, that we grew up hearing about.
Oh yeah. But it's funny because that's so much him. Yeah.
This is some of your, I believe, like really great and will be forever talked about COVID humor.
Oh, yeah.
You made us a handy chart and shared with us what each of these things represents, what it's kind of equivalent to. So can you take us through this?
Sure. Well, hugging your friend, the risk equivalent is licking subway pole, which I can't wait to get back to. When I get my second vaccine, I am going to be back in there, like licking every subway pole. I just can't wait. Dinner party, French kissing everyone in subway car. Restaurant, licking floor of subway car. Theater, French kissing everyone in subway car, then licking subway pole. And flying, French kissing everyone in subway car, then licking pole, then licking floor. So
and go shake hands and commit to some sort of project. You don't commit to some sort of community good. And so the low.
Oops.
I don't know who that was, but we got rid of that sound. But that's very true. And we all kind of worry, I think, and did worry. And then to see it in a cartoon, just kind of the service I believe that you do for people who are looking at your cartoons is you kind of bring their worries kind of into the realm of, oh, I'm not the only one who had this thought. And somehow it's very disarming and brings us to kind of make some peace, I believe,
You want to?
with our thoughts, you know?
Well, I think that humor, for me anyway, humor and anxiety are very intertwined. I mean, I think I tend to be a kind of anxious person. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes the anxiety does sort of turn a corner and become funny. So this is a tombstone joke. I love tombstone jokes. This is tuned in, turned on, dropped out, dropped in, worked out, saved up, dropped dead. Sort of, you know.
The story of all of our existences, right? Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was about whether or not if you feel that humor is a luxury or humor is kind of a necessity, or, you know, where does it fall? Like that.
Well, for me, it's a necessity. I mean, for me, it's definitely a necessity. I don't think I could get through the day without finding some things funny. I think if I didn't, I think I would really, it would not be good.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's really helped some of us, but this one is particularly resonant in a world where women are feeling that you know,
yeah.
the
Well,
value of this comment. She persisted.
well, this was sort of based on that "she persisted" joke, but really it's more about the subway and about not quite realizing that the bee does not run on weekends, and you stand there and like, so this really has nothing to do with women as much as it has to do with being a person and not realizing that you're waiting for a train that is not going to come until Monday. You know, so, you know,
Yeah.
feel free to just stand there and watch every train pass you by, because that bee is not coming.
In here, in your book, Going Into Town, you do get into the subway a little bit, some advice about how to look at the subway and how to understand the letters and the numbers and which one runs when, correct?
Well, I realized that, you know, a lot of guidebooks to New York, they'll tell you things like, you know, where the Empire State Building is, or, you know, who designed Central Park or whatever, but they don't tell you very basic things. I mean, that book, I made it for my daughter, who went, as you said earlier in the program, went off to college in the city. And a lot of guidebooks don't tell you really basic stuff, like Fifth Avenue divides the East Side from the West Side. I mean, how do you not tell somebody that? You know, it's like really, you know, or what uptown is, what downtown is, that, you know, downtown, a downtown train isn't like, yeah, we're going to go to the hip part of town. Like, no, downtown means the train will go to Lower Manhattan, then it's going to go into Brooklyn, as opposed to uptown, which means you're going to go to the Bronx. You know, things that, I don't know. So it was really based on, that book was based on a sort of pamphlet that I'd made for my daughter, that we're telling her things, because when she first went off to school, I wanted to explain to her like why you couldn't really get lost. It was hard to get lost in Manhattan because the streets were in order. So I said, you know, if you are on 41st Street and you want to walk to 43rd Street, you walk up 2 blocks. And she actually said to me, "What's a block?"
Oh my.
Yeah. So, you know, that was, you know, I'm sort of starting from square one. So she really
Well, I'm
didn't.
sure your book has helped a lot of people get from square one and further in. And then there are some real avid New Yorkers who love the book just because it brings it all together with a bit of a humor. Here's the motherboard cover, and it gets back into what we were talking about in the beginning, which was your embroidery.
Yes, this is an embroidered cover. I think this was the first embroidered cover for the New Yorker. I mean, it's a piece of fabric that was embroidered on and then scanned. It's not an app. It's not a filter. It's a photograph of a piece of fabric with an embroidery. And it was a motherboard because it was the Mother's Day issue and also the tech issue. So thinking about an image for the tech issue and the Mother's Day issue, of course, what else could it be but a motherboard?
Great. And again, it's for me, I just keep finding these juxtapositions of nostalgic things butting up against contemporary things. And I love the partnership that I keep seeing in your work in that.
Oh, thank you.
Here's this nod to Fauci and the little Fauci that we can see on your shoulder or on her shoulder.
Oh.
And this Fauci is saying, that's not 6 feet. That's more like 4.5 feet. No, it's not safe to hang out at Taco Tower. Hey, where's your mask?
That was early in the pandemic. So crazy.
Have you found that the lockdown and the pandemic, so to speak, has been giving you some ideas? Has it been good for your?
Yes, especially a few months ago when I felt more in the thick of it. I mean, right now I'm actually kind of a little tired of it as a topic, and I'm starting to think about other things. So
yeah, what are you working on? Are you working on another book?
Yeah, I am working. I'm working on a couple of books, a long-term project and a short-term project. And just other projects, embroideries and Pisanki and stuff like that. There's always projects. So.
Yeah, I posted in the chat for everyone Roz's Instagram, which is Roz Chast. So if you want to follow her and see what she's thinking about, that's a great way to do it. I particularly enjoyed this one, and I put it in our promotional material because we spend so much time doing programming and having Zooms and working on Zoom, and I loved your take on it with these Zoom backgrounds.
Yes. Yeah, I don't like fake backgrounds. I don't know. Unless they're sort of funny, unless somebody does something kind of, funny with it. But I actually enjoy seeing people's houses and it's I don't know.
Yeah, I know. And there's also this sort of like weird sort of like halo around people's heads when they use the fake backgrounds that they kind of go in and out of.
Yes, and also sometimes like with a fake background, they'll lift up their hand, but the like part of their arm will disappear. Yeah. Have you ever seen that? It's like then there's like this disembodied kind of thing.
That's right.
It's creepy.
I'm just going to show one more piece that's particularly resonant to my family and maybe to comers of our Jewish gallery, but I just want to get to it right now. This one is really priceless because here you have a meal for the whole family and everybody has some kind of food issue.
Yeah, it's just like the end. We can't have salt, lactose intolerant, vegetarian, vegan, macrobiotic, fanatic traditionalist, on a cleanse, strictly kosher, ultra picky gourmet, and allergic to gluten. It's just like, no, I'm done.
You're done.
Oh, I'm done. Get a pizza. I don't care.
Rice cakes for all.
Yeah, exactly. Cereal.
That's right.
We'll have cereal for Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for these Wheaties.
That's right. Well, how about if I stop sharing the screen, and if anybody has any questions, we can all get to it. So let me see if anybody's written a question in the chat, or maybe if somebody wants to raise their hand, I'll try to find them and you can ask Roz a question. Serena Lee, can you unmute yourself?
First of all, I love your work and I think it is totally amazing. Do you have any pets?
I do have pets. I have 2 parrots. I have an African gray. They're known as the best talkers, and she does talk. And I have a Kaik, who is another kind of parrot, smaller and not a very good talker, doesn't talk at all, but she's really cute and funny. And yeah, do you have pets?
Yes. Here. This is Ollie, my kitten.
Oh, so cute. Hi, Ollie.
Thank you.
I know Serena's a very, very big fan of yours, Roz.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question for Roz? Let me see if I can find you. Yes, Kathy?
And I did. Okay.
I am a huge fan. I have a folder of all of your clippings.
Oh my God.
I kept for years. I was at your gallery exhibit down in Chelsea or wherever down a couple of years ago, and I noticed that you had saved or you had on display, many of, sorry, that's Con Edison. You had saved many of your childhood pieces in that exhibit.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk to you about why you felt the need to include many of your childhood pieces in that exhibit.
It wasn't really my, it was the people who put the exhibit together who asked me whether I had any, childhood drawings. And so I said, yeah, okay. But it wasn't my, first idea.
Okay, but when you look at your childhood work, how does that play into your, like, sort of your history and your where you come from and how you feel about yourself as an artist now?
I can see a thread that goes back there. Absolutely. I think I've always liked to draw people, and I have a drawing of me and my parents in the living room, and there's a sofa and there's lamps, and I can definitely see in a sort of pull towards certain stuff. I mean, I never liked to draw cars, let's put it that way. And I don't like anything about cars. In fact, I don't like to drive. I don't like to draw them. I don't know how to draw them. I don't care. But furniture, lamps, interiors, I'm not good at landscapes. I think because I have seen paintings of landscapes that, are wonderful, but it's not something that pulls me in as much as interiors.
You're good at couches.
Couches, lamps, backs of television sets, floors, rugs, a coffee table. I like the idea that I can draw a room that has like an end table, and even if I don't draw what's inside of the end table, you'll know what's in it if you open a drawer.
What
So I just want to show I have the original motherboard cover right here. The original right here.
Somebody
Oh my God.
about the subway and whether what is it about the subway that draws your attention?
Oh, like everything. Well, first of all, it's the greatest way to get around. But I think it's also because you're with all these people, and I just love to look at them. That's one thing about New York that I adore, is just there's always people, and there's always people to look at and observe, and how they've dressed themselves, how they're sitting, the expression on their faces. It's just endlessly interesting to me.
Yeah.
And the subway is a sort of perfect place to sort of study that.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question that they would like to ask? Karen? Oh, I think you're muted, Karen. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. I'm a member of a book club, Roz, and one of the members is here somewhere. I saw her name. We did your book Can we talk about something more pleasant? Many years ago. And it was interesting at the time. One reads the book, and it depends upon in life where you are. And at that time, I thought more of being the daughter and seeing my parents as you did. And then as I think about the book, and probably the woman who's there as well, I think about myself now at the other end as the mother, and what my kids are thinking about the things that I say. The book was heartwarming, sad, and hilarious all at the same time. So I just wanted to make that comment. It's well worth reading at this stage of your life, because you can get the perspective of both being the daughter and the parent at the same time, if you're right in the middle. And the other is that we have a New Yorker group here that discusses the New Yorker every week.
Oh,
And
how great.
those members are here as well. And they are very familiar with your work. So I wanted to tell you that we're well aware of the wonderful stuff that you do.
Oh,
And,
well, thanks.
very poignant and very
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, there are a lot of New Yorker readers here. Does anybody else have a question? Looking. Seth?
My
Amy?
question is, given how much humor is in your work, do you think of yourself as in part a comedian? And do you ever think of collaborating with other comedians?
Yes.
I do collaborate. With humor writers. I mean, I've collaborated with Steve Martin. I've collaborated with a musician, Stephen Merritt, with my dear friend, Patty Marks, Patricia Marks, who's a humor writer. And I'm actually starting a project with a comedian right now, but I don't want to give away his name, doing a book. So yeah, I like collaboration. It's interesting.
Just looking, let's see.
Somebody in the upper left-hand corner, at least on my screen, I can see.
What's the name of the book? Roz?
Glenna, how about you?
Thanks. I was wondering, when you come up with a cartoon, what's in your head first, clever words or images?
It's usually words, but every once in a while, I'll just be doodling and something will come from the doodle. But I would say it's probably 90% of the time, the words come first, and 10% of the time, the image comes first. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think we have time for one more question. Anybody have a final?
Roz, it's Marsha. What's the name of the book that people are referring to, please?
The book I wrote about and drew about, it's a graphic memoir. It's called Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant?
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the great titles of all time.
Comes from my father.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of his favorite things to say when the stressful topic came up. It was, can't we talk about something more pleasant? So
My mother too. I just wanted to ask, since we're at the Westchester Jewish Center, I just have to ask, do you consider yourself to have some sort of Jewish sensibility, or is that ridiculous?
it's not ridiculous. I think I do, probably. But it's sort of also intertwined with New York, which maybe, the two are sort of braided together in a funny way, I think. But yeah, I do. I mean, my parents they weren't religious, but they were definitely Jewish and very aware of that. And they didn't, we did not have a Christmas tree. We did not, they lit the candles, and my mother did light, Shabbos candles Friday night. And, so yeah.
They immigrated here from Russia, right? So
Well, my grandparents, all of my grandparents did. My parents were born here.
I guess I just meant in your stance toward the world.
I think that if you're Jewish, even if you don't think that your stance towards the world is Jewish, the world thinks of you as Jewish. So you might as well own it, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. So.
And that's a great note for us to conclude on tonight. Whatever messages that people can use the art world for, and can use various art medium for, they can portray and convey their images and their views to the rest of us. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted Roz to join us at the Judaica Gallery, because so much of what, as you were all thinking about, does resonate with our experience as Americans and as Jews. So thank you, Roz, and we really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Good luck with everything, and we'll be watching and reading and feeling like we know you just a little better. But
All
thanks.
righty. Have a good night.
Have a
Bye.
good night.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Funny, funny.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. And we'll be in touch through our email, and we're going to post this exhibition on our WJC website, as well as a recording of our talk with Roz. And, if you'd like to see her work in the flesh, so to speak, you can go to the Carol Cora Gallery.
I can leave.
And check it out there in Kent, Connecticut.
Anytime.
So thank you so much for joining tonight. And
Congratulations, Amy.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Great. It was wonderful. Oh, well, that's postal.
Thank you. This was great.
I'll stick around if anyone has any questions.
Had a great turnout, Amy.
Oh, she was lovely. She's such a great draw. She's so personable and easy to talk to, and
Oh, yeah, you feel like you know her right away.
Yeah, that was good.
she's just lovely. And it's always a treat to open the magazine and think, is there going to be one this week, and look for it. And
It usually is.
yeah, I've been noticing that.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Bonnie. Bye, Bonnie.
Hey, Iris. Hi, Lee.
Good. Thanks for coming.
It was great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Hi, Leslie. I guess we should go now. Good night.
Okay. You're down to family time. Okay, thanks, Amy. It was
Thanks,
good.
Leslie. Thanks for everything, Leslie.
Everyone should leave.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Hey, Amy. Not surprisingly, she's very funny off the page as well.
She is, isn't she? And she has a great laugh. She has such a lovely laugh.
I laughed like many times during the Zoom.
I always imagine what her home life must be like, because she's married to a humorist, a humor writer. She's married to Bill Franzen. So he's a humor writer for the New Yorker and for other places too. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
they must have a very witty home. Well, I'm going to sign off, but thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great.
It's great to see you.